This is Retirement Keys with Anthony Congemi from Crescent City Retirement Group. When a part of your financial strategy is out of tune, your long-term goals, your retirement savings, and your legacy can all suffer. With many years of experience in the financial industry, Anthony provides his clients and prospects with the information they need regarding Social Security, retirement income planning, wealth management, and much more. Listen in as we address your financial concerns and provide helpful solutions to put you on the path to achieving your retirement goals. And now, here is Retirement Keys with your host, Anthony Congemi.
So hello and welcome back to another show of Retirement Keys. I'm your host, Anthony Congemi, and we have our fabulous co-host as we do every Sunday, Tony Shore. Frankly, I would say, and I've said before, we really could not do the show without Tony. He is such a wealth of information as it relates to retirement planning, and we're just really blessed to have Tony co-host this show every week. So, Tony, thank you so much for being here.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me on the show. And I really appreciate that. I've been doing well, Anthony, looking forward to fall. Hopefully some good weather. We'll keep our fingers crossed after all the craziness that you've had. So, but I know your offices are pretty much back up and running, right?
They are since the storm, Tony. But I tell you, this hurricane, I went, and I know you don't know this area, but it's below Houma. We went down to Cocodrie, my son and I, last weekend. To just go, we wanted to bring some supplies. I have some clients down in Chauvin,
sure.
and then we did that, and then we went down all the way to the end down there. But I tell you, man, the devastation down in some of these areas from this storm is really just unbelievable. I tell you,
it's terrible.
It's really, but it really, I don't know how, what you saw of it in terms of pictures, but. It's really terrible. And, but, people are strong down here in Louisiana, and we've got a really, a strong spirit, and people are, rolling up their sleeves, and neighbors are helping neighbors, and we're getting back, getting back on our feet. But it was a blow, though, I'll tell you.
Oh, I bet. I understand that. Like 150 mile an hour winds. Who can deal with that? That's crazy. Nothing will stay down at that point. So let's talk about our topic today. We're talking about debunking retirement myths, correct?
Yes, debunking retirement myths. And I think it's going to be a great show. It's a great topic. As you know, there's many myths out there, and so we want to talk about them and give our listeners some ideas.
Sure. Well, and I'm excited for this one because I think as workers out there, Anthony, begin to get closer and closer to retirement, they probably also begin hearing more and more retirement myths. And, now the problem is that while they're hearing those myths, they're probably also hearing plenty of good information. So then the challenge becomes, what's real and what's not, correct?
That's it. So you hear so much out there. You don't really know. A lot of times, you could be hearing some very accurate information, or maybe not so accurate. So we're hoping in our show today, Tony, we can debunk some of those myths, and we will be referencing, I would say, a very credible a journal and article, the U.S. News and World Report article that we'll be referencing, Tony. The 10 retirement myths to debunk is really what our show is going to be about today. And it's going to be really, as I say, referencing this article that was written by U.S. News and World Report. And the article, goes on to talk about it. It really does a great job in highlighting some of the retirement world's most common myths. And the article's first myth is that once you retire, you're going to have a bunch of free time. And so even though, your imagination is probably filled with sunny days of sitting on the deck with a great book in your hand, the reality is you're likely to find your schedule full of whether it be volunteering for activities, hobbies, family gatherings, travel. So, I've talked to so many people, Tony. I tell you, I wish I had a nickel every time somebody said, they didn't know that, how they had any time to work because they're so busy in retirement.
Right. Right. Yeah. In fact, I know people like that who are busier than they ever were in their working years once they retire. I think my dad's one of them. So, and my mom keeps busy too. So I think that's interesting that you bring that up. That's a good point. And I think, it sounds simple, but it's true. I can't begin to count the number of retirees who did assume their days would be filled with just hours and hours of leisure time, but instead they found themselves as busier than when they were still working. But I think it's important to add here, Anthony, that almost all of them love what they're doing because they're doing what they want to, and that things they didn't have time for when they were still on the clock. So give us another one of your favorite myths. What about a historical myth to mix in with the retirement myths?
Sure. We've got one of those, Tony. Most of us have heard the phrase, let them eat cake.
Yeah,
let them have their
cake.
cake and eat it, which many believe was uttered by Marie Antoinette, the last queen of France, when she was told French peasants couldn't afford bread. However, the reality is that there's no evidence that she ever said that. This one appears to be a myth that's hung on for nearly 250 years.
Huh.
And speaking of cake, Tony, the next common retirement myth is that the retirement process is a piece of cake. The reality is that the retirement process, with its mountain of paperwork and seemingly endless lists of choices and decisions, can make some people feel completely overwhelmed. But it's important to understand that feeling overwhelmed is perfectly normal. And once you've had a little time to get adjusted, you'll begin to feel more confident. But, Tony, when you start thinking about, your estate planning and your, how things are going to pass on, and you think about your tax strategy and your investment strategy and your income plan and your healthcare strategy, and then there's multiple options, let's say, with each of those.
Sure.
It can get a little daunting. And that's why, we really, I feel as strongly today as I ever have that having a good retirement planner, a good retirement counselor, whether it be our firm or another firm. There's many good firms out there that focus on retirement planning, but it's so important to be dealing with a firm that really specializes. And I could just say, Tony, and especially, when you start looking at even other industries, like, for instance, right now we're in the middle of, finding roofers and finding sheetrock people and
Sure.
painters and all of this, right? And I don't know about you, Tony, but I tell you, I find that when you find a group of service people that really specialize in what they're doing, you get a much better result than the jack of all trades. And that's what I would encourage our listeners. Retirement planning, if you work with a good retirement planning firm, of course, you can, I believe, get a much better result because you've got a firm that really specializes in those areas.
Sure. Yeah, and that's really important. And I think I'm glad you mentioned that feeling overwhelmed is natural, because I think it's important for people to know that others have felt what they're feeling. But like you say, if you're working with a trusted financial services professional like yourself on your retirement strategy, then it's easy to navigate through the process, because they're going to help you get a plan in place, and this is what they do every day. This is what you do for your clients. So how about another historical myth for us?
Sure. So another good one that's pretty surprising Our Declaration of Independence wasn't actually signed on July 4th, 1776. Congress approved the document's language on July 4th, but the document wasn't officially signed until August 2nd, 1776.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I thought that was a very interesting.
I didn't know that.
Didn't know that. Another very common retirement myth is that once you've left the office for the last time, your taxes will be lower. In reality, once you retire, you may have fewer deductions and dependents to claim on your taxes, and don't automatically assume that moving to a state without income tax can save you a ton of money, because those states can sometimes have sales and property taxes that wipe out what you were hoping to save in income taxes. So, tax planning, Tony, where, I would say that, a lot of people might feel that, oh, well, hey, once I get into retirement, my tax, there will be no real tax strategy. I'll just, pay taxes on my income and my passive income. And I would say that couldn't be further from the truth. I think real tax strategies and tax planning can really be enhanced in retirement, Tony. And especially when you start thinking about some of these required minimum distributions and how people are actually, you have to take out certain amounts at certain ages, and really leveling the playing field where you're not getting, these surprise distributions that you could have, planned for and strategically planned for over time, Tony. So, in retirement, you can do, in a lot of cases, some very efficient tax planning.
Right. Yeah, and that I believe that. I think that makes sense. And you know what? I know from previous shows that there are a lot of potential taxes waiting for retirees. We've talked about that a little bit. So again, it's essential to work with somebody like yourself, a financial services professional who's going to help you really craft that retirement strategy that's going to shield you from taxes as much as possible. I know one of the goals that you set for your clients is to minimize their tax burden, especially when they hit retirement. I don't think it's a myth to say that this has been a great show so far, but let's take a quick break here, Anthony. Is there anything you want to add before we do?
Well, I just want to thank you all for tuning in this morning. I hope you're getting some benefit from the show. We really appreciate, you listening. And frankly, if you don't have a formal retirement plan, or if you'd like to see how these pieces work, all of the pieces we're discussing, we'd love to be able to sit with you, talk to you by phone or on a Zoom, meeting. We're doing a lot of those. We love in person, but some people would, like to meet via the internet. So we can meet with you, visit with you, and show you what we consider to be a real holistic retirement plan. So I just hope you take advantage of that.
All right, that sounds great. And listeners, stay tuned. We're going to be right back with more of Retirement Keys with our host, Anthony Kangemi, right after this.
You've been listening to our shows and advice on getting your finances in order and creating a retirement income plan that will last. Now is the time to take advantage of our special offer. This is Anthony Kangemi of Crescent City Retirement Group, and we're now offering a complimentary gourmet dinner and retirement planning workshop, The 5 Keys to a Stress-Free Retirement. This is one workshop you won't want to miss. Call in the next 20 minutes for this no-cost offer. Seating is limited. Call Crescent City Retirement Group within the next 20 minutes at 504-828-2171. That number again is 504-828-2171.
And welcome back to Retirement Keys. I'm your co-host, Tony Shore, and I'm here with our host, Anthony Kangemi. And Anthony, great show so far today. I'm loving it. During today's show, you've been highlighting some common retirement myths that people have likely heard as they think about getting ready for their own retirement adventures, right? And you've been tossing in some of your favorite historical myths, and I think discussing both retirement myths and historical myths is a good way to remind us how quickly and easily a myth can be falsely taken as the truth. So you got to be careful, especially when it involves your financial future. So this has been a good one. How do you want to start this segment?
Well, Tony, I think we can start with more myths from the U.S. News and World Report. The next interesting myth from the 10 retirement myths debunked is that Social Security will cover all of my retirement expenses. To me, this is absolutely one of the most important retirement myths for us to debunk today. The reality is that for most folks, Social Security may replace about 40 to 50% of their retirement income. Ultimately, Social Security was never intended to be used as a retired person's only source of income. The program was intended only to serve as a supplement to things like your pension, social 401k, IRA, and your investment income. So Social Security, where I would say, Tony, it really is a foundational piece to any retirement income. And we've gone through at length to talk about Social Security strategies, filing strategies. As you know, Tony, we have a Social Security maximization report that really, and it's an actuarial number crunching report that really brings to light the best strategies to really enhance your Social Security benefits. So Social Security is a foundational piece, but it's not the whole thing, right? So how does it all work together? Your 401k, your IRA, your investment income, your pension income, and your Social Security strategy to really enhance your retirement income.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. I think you really nailed it. Honestly, I can't even begin to tell you how many younger workers I've come across who falsely believe that Social Security is going to be there for them, and that's the main thing they're going to need to enjoy a healthy and safe retirement. And that is a dangerous myth, because if any of our listeners have questions or concerns about Social Security, I'd urge them to begin working with a financial services professional like yourself as soon as possible, because you want to make sure that you have Social Security as a good foundation and you maximize it, but that you also have other sources of income for retirement. Give us another one of your favorite historical myths, Anthony.
Well, this one is my all-time favorite, Tony. History has often suggested that one of the reasons Napoleon was driven to expand France's empire and increase his own personal power and reputation was because of his small physical stature. But in truth, Napoleon was 5'7" tall, which was actually slightly taller than the average man at that time. The article also dispels a myth about paying your bills after you retired. As it notes, many people believe they'll need in the ballpark of, let's say, 70% of their final pre-retirement salary to maintain their preferred lifestyle. However, that's a number few people can reach, and that's just fine, because many working people could live on about 35% of their gross income once their mortgage and debt payments are taken out of the equation. So what does that have to do with retirement? Well, once you've retired, many of your biggest expenses, like your mortgage, for example, are gone, which means you don't need as much income. And Tony, I would just say we go to great lengths when we start looking at a retirement income plan. We have to go to great lengths to make sure that our net income after federal taxes, after state taxes, after Medicare premiums or whatever it might be, health insurance premiums, that the net income coming in the door not only meets but exceeds the income needed in retirement, because we know we want to build in for some fun.
Oh, yeah, travel and things like that.
Travel and hobbies and all of the rest of it. So your retirement income, your net income after federal and state taxes and health insurance premiums or whatever it might be, really need to look good. I mean, need to look like it needs to look for you to not only pay your bills, pay your expenses, but also build in for the fun, for the vacation, for the travel, for the things that you're going to want to do, kids, grandkids, People have so many different things they enjoy in retirement, which we certainly encourage. And I would just say your retirement income plan needs to reflect that.
Well, yeah, it definitely does. And I can see where you're coming from with that. That's interesting. And I'm sure that's a big relief for some of our listeners, knowing they can have that plan in place and that you work so hard to make sure that they're going to have the income they need that will last their retirement. So what about another historical myth for us?
Well, the historical myth is one of that always makes me chuckle. This one here. After failing a test we studied really hard for, how many of us were told by a loving parent or a buddy not to sweat it because even Einstein failed a math class when he was a kid? While your buddy or loving parent's heart was in the right place, what they were saying was really just a myth.
Oh, yeah.
The reality is that at age 11, Einstein was already entertaining himself by reading college-level physics books.
Yeah, he wasn't failing any math
tests. He wasn't failing any tests. Okay.
Or math classes.
Although it's nice to I mean, think that he may have. And I don't know, maybe he did, but not according to our sources anyway.
Sure.
So the next common retirement myth, Tony, is that you'll be able to retire exactly when you want to. You know, truth be told, a very large chunk of retirees left their careers earlier than they'd anticipated because of health or a disability issue or to take care of a loved one. Still others were forced out of their job because of a corporate merger or downsizing. So now, so you really, we always, like to say that really people only retire for one or two reasons. They either want to or they have to.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, either they've got a plan, they know when they want to retire and everything just falls into place and they retire, they want to retire, And then you've got the other group that had to retire, as we just mentioned, maybe health changes or downsizing or whatever it might be. But, in either case, whether you want to retire or you have to retire, having a good plan in place to be able to just fall back on and trigger that plan really at a moment's notice. I mean, it's all in place. Is so valuable, Tony.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. And hey, I've got another one of my favorite historical myths. I thought of this one, I should bring it because I'm a radio guy. This one has to do with radio. And that is a commonly held myth is that in 1938, a radio version of H.G. Wells' story, The War of the Worlds, about an alien attack caused mass panic across the country. In reality, the mass panic was really nothing more than just a few confused people in a local area trying to call CBS or their local radio station just to check to make sure it wasn't real. It wasn't a countrywide phenomenon with thousands of people who thought it was real. A handful of people may have thought it was real. So there you go.
But back to retirement, another common myth is that significant health issues typically don't occur until after you've enjoyed several years of post-work life. But as the article explains, financial experts often work with clients who are dealing with things like arthritis and limited mobility and hearing problems fairly soon after they've retired. But please don't let this dose of myth versus reality get you down, because though none of us can ever completely predict what our health and circumstances will be like a few years down the road, with the right financial strategy, you may be able to successfully weather some of those unexpected situations that can pop up. And that's so true, Tony, because, when we build these retirement plans, one of the pieces, of course, is healthcare planning, and so having an appropriate healthcare plan, having that in place to where if there is an additional health care expense or cost, which is certainly happens, right? I mean, it's very common to have additional health care costs. There's many studies, many reports that talk about additional expenses, health care costs, and retirement. So it's no secret, but having a plan in place, having something in place to where if and when that does occur and you need additional income to pay for additional expenses, it doesn't derail the plan. We've already considered all that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's huge. Well, we're going to have to end the show there. We're out of time. It just flew by. But before we go, Anthony, is there anything else you want to add for our listeners today?
Well, I just want to thank you again for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the show. I do have a special offer I'd like to make, and I would just encourage you. There's no financial obligation. You're certainly not obligated, but take advantage of our special offer. Get that unique retirement strategy, your retirement plan. Let us put it together for you. You will have it in full. There's no cost or obligation. Please take advantage of this offer.
Thank you for listening to Retirement Keys. Don't pay too much for taxes or retire without a sound income plan. For more information, please contact Anthony Kangemi at Crescent City Retirement Group. Call 504-828-2171 or visit the website at crescentcityretirement.com. All matters discussed during this show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary, and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations can be made as to its accuracy. All ideas and information should be discussed in detail with one of our qualified representatives prior to implementation. Anthony Kangemi and Crescent City Retirement Group are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency.